Okay. Man, I don't want to. Okay. So I need to talk about the Arab Summit, even if I don't really want to talk about the Arab Summit, because if there's anything I really don't like doing, it's looking at Bashar al-Assad's face. He looks like if Cobra Commander was a real person, wearing like a fake skin suit. He looks like if, you know, if humans had evolved from snakes instead of people. I don't like Bashar al-Assad. He's a butcher who murdered protesters in 2004, and really every single subsequent year since then. He's been murdering protesters just like his father. Even though he's probably killed a lot more Syrians than his father, he's displaced millions of people, tortured children.
CapTBT gave Alice Tekka 1700 a tier 1 subscription. Site chat is clearly superior to gutter chat. Glory to site chat.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Captain TBT, for gifting a tier 1 sub to Alice in favor of the best chat in the world. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. He is a butcher. He is engaged in multiple war crimes, including the open admission barrel bombing of his own people. And most of his crimes have to be backed by the Russian government or the Iranian government.
Gave Slippers a tier 1 subscription. You're looking kinda sickly. Let's get some color back in your name.
Yes, yes, out with the whites. We don't accept whites in these parts. As in white names, as in unsubscribed people, as in subscribe to the channel. Subscribe to the channel, honkies. I mean, unsubscribe people, please do. Thank you so much for no chump change for gifting a tier 1 sub to Slippers. I appreciate it. Anyway, Assad, I don't like the guy. I think he's a fucking piece of shit. But I gotta say, the look on his face, even if the environment that this is happening sucks, it sucks to see Assad still ruling the country after butchering hundreds of thousands of his own people. It sucks to see that all these people, like, for example, the Saudis, which were very quick to use the Syrian opposition, to use the Syrian people to attack the Assad regime, because the Syrian people wanted to get rid of Assad. He was perfectly willing to dump guns to those groups, including groups that are extremely radical, which then in many areas hijacked the Syrian revolution. Very willing to hijack the Syrian revolution, dump it full of more guns, add to the chaos before dipping out once it gets too tough, and now getting back with the murderous dictator that he agrees on many fronts. Butchering and murdering journalists? Oh, the Saudis couldn't get more along with the Assad regime. Prisoning minority groups and persecution of minority groups could not get more along with the Assad regime. When it comes to lack of civil liberties, a million different issues when it comes to how they treat domestic political opponents, they could never get more along. Of course, when it comes to the Iranians, of course, when it comes to other geopolitical issues, they have disagreements. But it's not that hard for two butchers to smile and shake hands because they're of the same monster, they're of the same evil, they're of the same disgusting behavior. So it's not that surprising that the Saudis would be so willing to chew up the Syrian people and spit them out and encourage this normalization process. But Assad was not very happy during the Zelensky speech, as you can see from the expression he had right here, shortly after he took off his translator as Zelensky started speaking English. And so I wanted to watch the speech with Zelensky's speech that pissed off Bashar al-Assad so much, that made him scowl, that made the snake slither. So I wanted to see it. Let's see what that speech is. And I'm also excited to see what Zelensky said to all these fantastic people, everybody in the audience, of course, bastion of human rights. Let's watch.
Who defends his native land from invaders, and anyone who defends children of his nation from enslavement. Every such warrior is on the path of justice. And I'm proud to represent such warriors and the entire Ukrainian people. Ukrainians has never chosen the war. Our troops didn't go to other lands. We do not engage in annexations and plunder of other nations' resources, but we will never submit to any foreigners or colonizers. That's why we fight And I'm sure all your nations will understand this, our main emotion. And I'm also sure all your nations will understand the main call I want to live here in Jeddah, a noble call to all of you to help protect our people, including Ukrainian Muslim community. With me here, Ukrainian Muslim community. With me here is the Honorable Mustafa Dzhemilev, the leader of the Crimean Tatar people, one of the indigenous peoples of Ukraine, whose home is Crimea, the center of Muslim culture in Ukraine.
This is an interesting angle to talk about the responsibility of the international community to not only stand up for Ukraine, but specifically the Crimean Tatars, who have been persecuted under Russian occupation. Many Crimean Tatar activists were murdered under Russian occupation, tortured under Russian occupation. People would disappear in the middle of the night. Before you know it, their body would appear downstream after being murdered and dumped on the side of the road or dumped into a local river. And so it makes sense for him to, definitely since he's trying to connect to an audience that might have many disagreements with Zelensky, trying to connect with them through talking about the struggle and the history of the Crimean Tatar people and how they deserve to be able to live and practice their faith freely and be able to live free of occupation and harassment from Russian soldiers, which are untrusting of them due to their history of, independence, history of being, maybe a little upset about the legacy of the Soviet Union ethnically cleansing them in the region, not being too happy with Russian occupation. Crimean Tatars, the vast majority of them, are not very happy with Russian occupation, just like they were not happy with being ethnically cleansed during the Soviet Union. And so I think trying to pivot to this history, this Muslim history in Ukraine, and the fight of Muslims in his country to reclaim their territory, I think it's a good message to pitch here. Do I think it necessarily is going to be enough to convince anybody? No. Number one, a lot of them don't care about human rights. Number two, a lot of the people at this conference also are people who are perfectly willing to butcher other Muslims in conflicts across the region, or to, ally with certain people, for example, in Syria, and drop them at the turn of a hat once it's no longer convenient. Anytime I think about the Syrian revolution for long enough, I get depressed. So it's not necessarily going to be accepted by everyone, but I do think it's a good pitch. Whoever said that he should do this, or if he came up with it himself, it is a decent pitch, and it's a message that doesn't get talked about enough. So there's never going to be a better opportunity to talk about this than at the Arab League.
For centuries, the Crimean Tatar have been and should remain an integral and strong part of the Muslim community of the world. But Crimea was the first to suffer from the Russian occupation. And until now, most of those who are subjected to repression in the occupied Crimea are Muslims. We already have a positive experience with Saudi Arabia regarding the release of our people captured by Russia. We can expand this experience, and even if there are people here at the summit who have a different view on the war on our land, calling it a conflict, I'm sure that we can all be united in saving people from the cages of Russian prisons. Unfortunately, there are some in the world and here among you who turn a blind eye to those cages and illegal annexations. And I'm here so that everyone can take an honest look, no matter how hard the Russians try to influence. There must still be independence. And I want to thank Saudi Arabia. I want to thank the majority of you for supporting firm international positions and the UN Charter. Dear participants, your people have already seen that Ukrainians are people of peace, of real peace. In 2021, we made a priority. Ukraine opens to your people and the people of Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates, Oman, Bahrain, Kuwait got to know Ukraine. And I'm happy that your tourists were able to see the splendor of spring in our capital, in Kyiv, and the majesty of the Carpathian Mountains. I believe that one day your people will come back also to see our Crimea, Ukrainian Crimea, free from Russian occupation and humiliation. Our relations are also tied by the education of tens of thousands of Arab students in our universities every year. And it really is an honor for us that children from Morocco, Egypt, Jordan, Iraq, Lebanon, Algeria, Libya, and Tunisia went to Ukraine for education. With you, we fulfilled one of the most honorable tasks in the world, food security. Ukraine traditionally supplies your countries with wheat and other agricultural products. We were glad to welcome the investments of the Arab nations, as well as the investments of Qatar in the port infrastructure. First, the pandemic, and then a more terrible virus. The rabies of aggression hit these and our other normal relationships. And I'm more than sure that none of you will agree to surrender a third of your country to the invaders. And I'm more than sure none of you would watch without a fight how foreigners steal the children of your people. Hundreds of thousands of our children are deported to Russia, separated from their relatives. And there in Russia, they are trying to teach our children to hate their natives. And I'm more than sure that none of you would admit the military occupation of a nuclear plant to use it to blackmail the world with nuke disaster. Look at how much suffering the long-term wars have brought to Libya, Syria, Yemen, how many lives have been wasted by years of fighting in Sudan and Somalia, in Iraq and Afghanistan. Everyone who adds to suffering by his new aggressions, everyone who...
Okay, 1 second. Simchud, you're back again. Simchud, can I ask you a question? Do you believe anything that you say in chat? Can I ask you a question? You're back from yesterday. What a weaselly little liar, dude. In the end of the day, Ukraine is fucked. I don't really believe you believe anything you say. You don't believe anything you say. Okay, well then, why are you here if you don't believe anything you say? Why are you here if you don't believe anything you say? You do believe anything you say. You do believe everything you say. Okay, so what's the can you tell me what's the problem with this speech? I would like to hear it. It's not necessarily the best speech in the world, but I don't think he's really missed a beat. Is this a Discord or ban? It might be. I'd like to see, because you know what? I see objection to what Zelensky's saying. I feel like a lot of people just hear people they don't really like or don't align with their politics, like just talking, you know, just saying anything. And then people will kind of like, you know, like kind of like huff and haw, get angry when it's not really anything to get angry at. Because, you know, I've been listening to this speech, and what is this speech? Hey, we don't like it when our kids get stolen. You shouldn't be okay with that. Hey, if your nation got invaded, you'd be defending yourself too. Hey, we have provided you with many agricultural goods, and we'd like to do that more in the future. Hey, we believe that the struggle of the Crimean Tatars are important. Like what part of this is bad? What part of this did he miss a beat on? Just ignore him. Not worth pausing stream over. You mean pausing Zelensky's talk? No, I'm just interested because I see people a lot of time huff and haw when certain people come on stream. There's not really much to huff and haw about though. It's mostly a distorted speech. What does that even fucking mean? It's a distorted speech. God, man, I don't even know. Do you know what distorted means? You mean distorted? Okay, whatever. Let's continue.
Shows enmity. Everyone who wants to bring back the old days of invading empires that didn't count with the will of independent nations. Every aggressor goes against the world and will be cursed by the people. And I greet everyone who is ready to join us on the path of justice. Ukraine proposed the
It means twisting the facts? Okay. Okay. Would you like to come in here and tell me what facts he's twisting? I'm curious about it. We can do a Discord or ban. I'm willing to do that for this. Like, what facts is he twisting? No, you're not willing to come in here? No, fuck you. Oh my god, man. Look, it's the babysit hour. I say thing. Can you defend thing? No, I say thing, but I can't defend thing. I can't defend thing. I huff and I haw, but it has zero substance. Come on. Come on. Look, now I think it makes sense. It seems that everybody who's not supportive of Ukraine seems to be extremely terrified of confrontation. Maybe that's you know, a sign, you know? I hate to psychoanalyze people, but I think it seems to be a sign.
the peace formula to end the war. You can see how it works on the example of food security, one of the points of our formula. Even when the war is thrown into our home, we do everything so that the homes of other peoples also survive. We managed to launch the Black Sea Grain Initiative and partially lift the Russian naval blockade of our ports. This stabilized food markets and helped many, including the nations of the Arab League. The implementation of another point of our peace formula will...
TBT gave soap_boxa tier 1 subscription. The trolls in gutter chat are jealous. They can't compare to the brave leader of Ukraine, who has given hope to millions of people.
Look, I don't want to engage in politician worship, right? I don't like worshiping politicians, but I am pretty sure that Zelensky is the second coming of Christ. I am quite positive about that.
Also help many the return.
That was a joke. That was a joke. That was a joke. It's not gonna help me. You guys are gonna clip it. You're gonna post it on Twitter. You're gonna post it on Twitter.
Home of all.
Don't post it on Twitter. That's a bad clip.
Captive.
I can't wait to have 50 people in my DMs. Why? What? You fucking heretic piece of shit. You servant of the New World Order.
And deportees. Each of the honorable delegations was given a document in your language with 10 points of the peace formula. Please, you can choose the point to help that you consider appropriate, and I will be grateful to each of you who will choose exactly the direction of rescuing people held in Russian captivity. So I invite all of you who respects peace to join the implementation of the peace formula and thus to reduce enmity and wars, suffering and evil. Russia is weak. We beat it even when it has more weapons in their hands. Its aggressiveness doesn't come from strength, but from the understanding that the time of empires has passed. That's because the time of free independent nations will never end. And Ukraine proves it. I wish you peace. I invite you to cooperate directly with our country without any intermediaries. And may our and your strengths act in a coordinated manner for the peace and good of people of all nations. And please listen to the Crimean Tatar people, listen to the Muslims of Ukraine. May the Almighty protect our soldiers. Slava Ukraini. Thank you.
How much you want to bet Assad made a point to make sure the camera saw that he didn't clap? How much you want to bet? How much you want to bet?